At the height of their success, Stray Kids seemed unstoppable. Every release hit the charts, every tour sold out, and every performance went viral. They were living the dream, the global fame, the recognition, the legacy that most artists spend their whole careers chasing. But behind the flawless choreography and chaotic laughter, there was something that didn't always show on camera: the pressure. The kind of pressure that comes not from failure, but from success itself. From trying to hold on when everything around you is moving too fast. For Stray Kids, success arrived like a storm. From small practice rooms to global arenas, the transition happened in what felt like an instant. The workload doubled, the expectations tripled, and the world's eyes never looked away. Fans saw the joy, the smiles, the gratitude, but underneath that, there was exhaustion. There were sleepless nights spent in studios, constant travel between continents, and the never-ending need to outdo themselves. Bang Chan once admitted during a live broadcast that he often couldn't sleep, not because he wasn't tired, but because his mind wouldn't stop thinking about what needed to be improved, how to make the next performance better, how to take care of the team. That kind of responsibility is invisible on stage, but it never leaves you. When Stray Kids became a global phenomenon, the pressure to stay perfect only grew heavier. It wasn't just about writing good music anymore, it was about maintaining the standard they had set. Each comeback needed to be bigger, louder, and more powerful than the last. Every move was analyzed, every lyric dissected, and every live performance judged. The higher they climbed, the smaller the room for error became. It's a strange reality in K-pop. The more success you achieve, the more you lose your freedom to fail. For Stray Kids, that reality became a constant mental battle. They never talked about it directly at first, but longtime fans, the stays, could sense it. The cracks weren't in the group's unity, but in their energy. There were moments where voices sounded tired, smiles looked a little strained, and interviews carried a quiet kind of fatigue. The boys were still giving everything, but the pace was relentless. In one interview, Felix mentioned that he sometimes lost sight of who he was outside of Stray Kids, that the constant motion made him forget what it meant to simply rest. That honesty wasn't weakness. It was a glimpse into the human side of success that most people never see. This wasn't a scandal or a breaking point. It was a silent burnout. The kind that creeps up on you when you're too focused on making everyone else happy. For Stray Kids, it was their so-called dark era. Not because of mistakes, but because of the weight of their own expectations. The dark era wasn't about failure or controversy, it was about endurance. It was about 8 people learning how to keep moving when success began to feel heavier than the journey itself. For Stray Kids, fame didn't break them, but it forced them to face what it really meant to be human under the spotlight. When you're self-produced, you carry more than just creative control. You carry the pressure of expectations, the stress of deadlines, and the constant fear of letting your team or fans down. For Three Racha, that meant spending endless nights in the studio, producing, mixing, rewriting, and making sure every song met their own impossible standards. For the rest of the members, it meant giving everything on stage while hiding the exhaustion that never quite faded. Bang Chan, Han, and Chang Bin have all spoken in different ways about that pressure, about how passion can sometimes become a weight when you love something too deeply. When you care that much, every small mistake feels personal. Every moment of rest feels undeserved. But what made Stray Kids different was how they responded to it. They didn't suppress the exhaustion, they transformed it. Instead of silence, they turned to music. Instead of pretending, they wrote. The proof is in their songs. Levanter, Oh Slump, Lonely, and Karma all came from moments of reflection, from quiet places where pain turned into melody. Their lyrics aren't just artistic, they're emotional maps of the times they felt lost, scared, or overwhelmed. When you listen closely, you realize that their dark era wasn't darkness at all. It was a search for light. Songs like Levanter talk about letting go to move forward. Slump describes the burnout that comes from trying to stay relevant. And Karma carries that sense of balance between ambition and acceptance. Each one is a confession disguised as a chorus. Through their music, they were telling fans, and maybe even themselves, we're struggling too, but we're still here. This honesty became their healing process, and it's what made fans love them even more. Stays weren't drawn to perfection. They were drawn to authenticity. They could see that behind every chaotic laugh and every powerful performance were real people carrying real weight. When Bang Chan spoke openly about sleepless nights or self doubt, fans didn't turn away or they reached out. Comment sections filled with messages of understanding, telling him it was okay to rest, that he didn't have to carry everything alone. That connection between Stray Kids and their fans became something more than support. It became mutual care. The group's resilience came from that relationship. They began to realize that vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was strength. By showing their cracks, they allowed others to see the light coming through. That's what kept them going. They weren't performing for applause anymore. They were performing to stay connected to themselves, to each other, and to the people who believed in them when things got hard. When you look at Stray Kids now, it's clear they didn't just survive their dark era, they evolved through it. That period of quiet exhaustion shaped the version of Stray Kids we see today. More self aware, more intentional, and more at peace with the chaos that used to overwhelm them. They learned that success doesn't have to come at the cost of well being, and that strength isn't about pretending you're okay. It's about admitting when you're not and still choosing to move forward together. Bang Chan became the anchor in that process. His leadership shifted from pushing harder to protecting smarter. He started emphasizing rest, reflection, and teamwork over perfection. He often reminded fans and his members that taking breaks is part of growing, not a sign of weakness. That shift changed the group's rhythm. Felix started focusing on self care and mindfulness, finding balance between performance and peace. Han and Changbin continued writing, but with new maturity. Their lyrics moved from desperation to clarity. And the rest of the members, from Hyunjin to Seungmin to Lino and IN, began to express themselves more freely, no longer weighed down by the need to always appear strong. Their later music reflects that transformation. Songs like Super Bowl and Karma feel bolder, more confident, yet grounded in self-awareness. You can feel that they've stopped running from the pressure. They've learned to walk with it. The energy that once felt frantic now feels focused. The chaos that defined their earlier years has turned into control. They've turned survival into art, pain into perspective, and burnout into balance. What's even more powerful is how transparent they've remained with fans. Instead of hiding the hard parts of fame, they've continued to share their thoughts openly. Whether it's Bang Chan's late night lives, Hyunjin's quiet reflections, or Felix's heartfelt interviews, they've turned openness into a kind of shield. It keeps them connected to their fans and to each other. That authenticity and that refusal to fake perfection is what separates them from so many others in the industry. The dark era wasn't a downfall, it was a mirror. It showed them what truly mattered. Not numbers, not trophies, but the bond they built and the honesty they've always held on to. And in a way, that's what fans fell in love with from the start. Stray Kids are loud, chaotic, and unpredictable. But they're also deeply human. They make mistakes, they struggle, they question themselves, and yet they never lose sight of who they are. When the lights fade and the crowds go home, what remains is 8 people who trust each other completely. Their story isn't about fame or perfection. It's about persistence, about choosing to stay, even when things get heavy. That's the real secret behind Stray Kids' strength. They've learned that even in darkness, you can still find light. And sometimes, that light shines brightest when you share it. Because at the end of the day, that's what Stray Kids have always been about. Not avoiding the storm, but dancing through it together.